Right, quick question for you. If I asked you right now, hand on heart, how accurate is your tracking? Not are you tracking, how accurate is it? Most people would say, yeah, pretty good. I track most of my meals. And that is a problem, okay? Most. Not all, most. Because I'll tell you something that catches out every single one of my one-to-one clients before we start together. They're not actually lying about their tracking. They're not purposely withholding the information. They genuinely just, they don't realize how much of it is slipping through the cracks. And that gap, that little bit in their head that doesn't count, is the exact reason why people are sitting there thinking to themselves, I'm in a deficit, why am I not losing weight? So in this video I want to break down exactly where that gap comes from, why it matters more than people think, and why it's usually not the meals that are the problem at all. So here's what that tracking looks like for most people who think they're doing it right. Breakfast logged, lunch logged, dinner logged. But what about the oil that was used to cook the chicken? What about the sauce that you used on the chicken because it was a bit dry? What about the few bites you had off your partner's plate? Or the handful of nuts that are sitting on the counter? Or the handful of jellies that are sitting on the counter that you walk past and you say, I'll have a few. It doesn't feel like real food. It doesn't feel like something you have to open up MyFitnessPal for and track. You'll say it's not a meal, so why would I bother tracking it? And that is exactly the problem. Your brain has decided what counts as food and what doesn't, but your body is well aware that it's food. And that's one problem, those small little things that you kind of forget to track or think it's not really worthwhile tracking. The other problem is your portion sizes, the guessing. That's about 150 grams when it's probably closer to 220 grams. Small errors like that repeated 3, 4, 5 times a day, every single day. And while it may still seem like it's not a big deal and it's not going to make much of a difference, right? Let me show you the numbers. Let's say 200 or 300 calories a day goes unaccounted for because of this. It's usually a lot more, but let's just say 200 or 300. The sauces, the oils, a little bit here, a little bit there, the underestimated portions. It does not sound like much, but over the course of a week, that's an extra 1400 to 2100 calories that you haven't tracked. And that's almost the equivalent of, like, depending on your calories, obviously, another full day of eating. Look at it like an entire day that you haven't accounted for every single week. And you are sitting there thinking, why is the scale not moving? Even though you're tracking. This is why so many people say to me, Dave, I'm eating in a deficit. Why am I not losing weight? It must be my metabolism, must be my hormones, it must be something. And look, sometimes there is something else going on. I'm not saying there isn't. But for the vast majority of people, it's because they're tracking only 75% of what they're actually consuming every day. Now, if you're sitting there watching this thinking, that is probably me. This is the exact kind of thing I fix with people from day one when we start working together. I've actually put together a free 4-week program called the Fluffy Fix that walks you through exactly this. Proper tracking, proper structure, no guessing your calories, being accurate. The link to this is in the description below. Drop your email in and I'll send it straight over. Doesn't cost you a penny. I just want to help people fix this. Right, back to the video. So why does this happen to generally switched on people who think they're doing everything right? And honestly, the feedback I get is that tracking every single sauce, tracking all the oil, every bite off someone else's plate feels excessive. Nobody wants to be the person weighing a teaspoon of ketchup. Here's the problem with that, okay? You don't get to skip out on tracking a quarter of your food and then be confused about why the scale isn't moving. You can't have it both ways. Either you're tracking accurately or you're not. And if you're only capturing 75% of what you're consuming, you are not in the deficit you think you're in. Full stop. And that is not me being harsh, it's just a reality. And this is where people get the whole tracking conversation wrong. They treat close enough the same as accurate. Close enough is how you get 2 months into a plan, think you're doing everything right, and not seeing the scale move. And then blaming your metabolism, your hormones, absolutely anything you can, except the actual gap in your tracking. You are allowed to think tracking every single bit of food you consume is overkill. Fair enough. But then you do not get to complain when the results do not match the effort you feel like you are putting in. It's very simple. If you want the results, the tracking has to match the standard you're expecting from the results. You can't do 75% of the work and expect 100% of the outcome. If this sounds exactly where you're at right now, I built that 4-week free program specifically for this. The Fluffy Fix, it is completely free. As I said, it walks you through proper tracking and structure. Links below, drop your email in and I'll get it sent over. Okay, and I'll see you in the next video.